my way into doing. Alrighty. Okay, awesome. Welcome everyone. So I guess this is automatically recording. So hopefully no one said anything too embarrassing, I guess. Um, Thanks, to all of you alums for joining. So I had, a few students kind of reach out to me after we sent out the invite, and a few felt like they were going to be able to be here tonight. And then, just with kind of like coming off spring break and whatnot, there were, people are interested. And so I think this will just be a really kind of helpful informational webinar that we'll record and then, send out just so that students get a better understanding of what the internship is. So I think it speaks volumes that basically all the alums are here. So I'm Ben Sherhammer, Dr. Delisser and myself sort of made a little bit of a transition last year where I'm going to help take a little bit more of the day-to-day work off of his hands and work a little bit more closely with Rhoda coming up. And hopefully, keep the internship going in a strong fashion. And my background is I'm actually a urologist over at and recently started at Penn about 2 years ago. And so just thought that this was just an amazing opportunity. So with that being said, we sent you all a few questions. So hopefully you've had a little bit of a chance to reflect and think about that. We'll go kind of on the order in the email. And if it's okay with you, Dr. Delisser, I'll just maybe have you give a little bit of the overview, history, and vision for the program. Then Rhoda will give, overview of the format, and then we'll kind of go in order. And I think that should wrap things up. So,
well, I'm not going to say too much because I really want to leave space and time for the students to share their experiences and their impressions of the program. But by way of history, this is actually an internship that Rhoda and I put together. I think we're approaching 8, 9 years, maybe even 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of conceiving of this and then putting together the curriculum and then the pedagogy for this type of experience. And for me, as a faculty person who's been very much involved in cultural competency and in developing physician professionalism and humanism, a internship and an experience built around spirituality and health very much aligns with what I've been working on and what we've been focusing on more broadly in terms of how do we prepare our students to be their very best in engaging patients. And that requires all kinds of skills and competencies. And one of those competencies is certainly being able to engage patients around their sense of meaning, how they define purpose, how they make sense of the world, how do they create community, and how do they think about things like legacy and destiny. All those things are wrapped up in concept of spirituality. And it's been my experience as a clinician and as an educator that these issues of purpose, meaning, identity, destiny, relationships are not covered well in medical school curricula. And so, again, teaming up with Rhoda, we put together this internship as a way for enabling students who wanted a deeper dive in this aspect of the human experience, the opportunity to really develop it. And, we've had, I think, really good success with the internship. I think students have really found it very valuable, and you'll hear much more about that. But I found it very valuable in terms of, I think, having a better sense of who they are and kind of the self-work that is, I think, critical to becoming a physician, but more importantly, developing those relational and communication skills, as well as just some core competencies that again help them to engage patients on the most fundamental of level. So I think that's, Ben, I think that's where I'll stop and I'll turn it over to Rhoda.
Okay, thank you. I definitely affirm everything you said, Dr. DeLisser, and I'm going to give an overview of the content and structure of the program, but I think the students will give the best reflection on how much more than what I'm going to address happens during the internship. And so one of the things, just to put forth and see if this is going to be a surprise for you who are in your first year, this is going to be the last year of your summer, like last year of your life that you are not a clinician. And it's rare for medical students to even notice that because you're looking so far ahead. And so that is one example of a self-awareness insight offered to you. One of the things that got me really interested in this is I came from a medical family, and I really appreciate the richness and mastery and skill of being a physician. And I also know the rigor and impact on personal life and family. So I'm invested in this because I want to help you have robust thriving through your professional career, which certainly involves patient care. And so that's part of my investment and commitment to this, is to help you develop. So daily structure. One of the things that will be different for many of you is that this will be in large part a Monday through Friday business hours, 8 to 4, 9 to 5 kind of schedule, which may be the first time that you are not in a student schedule culture. And so we also have some weekends, but then you get days off if there's extra time put into things so that there's, again, balance. So the daily structure involves mostly education in the morning, and that includes lots of rich material like patients expecting a miracle, research in spiritual care and health. We have palliative care seminars. There are so many seminars, and we also have a journal club. There's a capstone. There's research that we review. And so then, and also in the morning, we have student patient presentations that you would write up to learn from. And we also have integrative conversations that have to do with self-awareness, relational development, and communication skills. We also have in the morning mindfulness practice and self-care development. Afternoons, this is the part that is really exciting for a lot of students, is you get to visit patients pretty much Monday through Friday in the afternoons. And we begin that with orientation on the units in the first day, 2 days. And by the end of the week, you are visiting patients. The patient visitation will be profoundly different from your current orientation to patients, and it will provide profound lifelong results, personally and professionally. Students, again, will speak more to that. We also have religious immersion excursions, which include substantial time with various religious traditions: Buddhism, Islam, Catholicism, Black Church, Black Urban Church, and others. And we also have trauma chaplain shadowing in an evening or 2 or 3, depending on your interest and availability. And last, I'm going to be available before, during the breaks and after doctoring tomorrow. And I'm also going to put my phone number in the chat so that you can text me if you want to reach out to me and can't do that tomorrow. Thank you. So now we get to turn this over to, now who's going to be the first student who gets to speak?
I think we were going to go with Darvin's just because he's the
Yeah,
most recent grad.
beautiful. Okay.
Yeah, looks like I get the pleasure of going first. Yeah, hey everyone, I'm a second year. My name is Darvin, second year medical student here on rotations. And yeah, just to be honest about how I approached this internship, this was like the only program I applied for. So like I was sold from the email. So that's kind of how I view things. It was very much up my wheelhouse. Or for people who may be on the fence or trying to figure out if this is for you, I was just going to share some of my favorite parts of the program. I think the first one I thought of and reflecting on my experience is definitely the people, like Rhoda, Dr. Lisser, Dr. Shermer as well, last summer in terms of spending time with them and all of them being able to kind of speak from their expertise and kind of offer you a framework to think about these complex patient interactions and also giving you a space to reflect on your own beliefs, whether they be spiritual, non-spiritual, religious, non-religious, just kind of these parts of our being or personality or experiences that don't really get put to the forefront where in medical school, which is very much scientific and rigorous and material. So there is kind of this space to think about things that or topics that aren't always brought up in those spaces. So I think just the personnel that this program exposes you to allows you to kind of grow in the merit of different ways. My second favorite part is definitely kind of like those field trips in terms of getting to talk to people of different faiths. I got to visit like a Muslim mosque, the Buddhist temple, and also a synagogue. Talk to a rabbi there, and I think it's helpful to learn and to speak to people with kind of different beliefs or faiths than one you may attest to or hold to, because it's just you're going to interact in medicine with people who are just different from you, not just from a kind of social uh, other factors, but from a religious one as well. So it's kind of I think it's helpful to just know where they're coming from or just to know what they believe, and it's kind of easier to get that access or get that information from someone who is like a leader within that community. So I found those experiences very helpful in terms of kind of understanding what they believe, but also how those beliefs intercede or intersect with medicine, which is helpful when I interact with patients that hold such beliefs. And lastly, I think people are going to talk about this too. Definitely the patient encounters are the best part of the program, I think. You go into a room, you know nothing, well, at least the way I did things, or I think that's kind of the format for the program. You kind of walk in sort of blind. You just are told or advised that some people in pavilion that you can speak to in different rooms. And you kind of just go in there. What I really liked about those encounters is that I didn't have to go in there with an agenda. Like I didn't come with a checklist of vitals or signs. I kind of just walked in and wanted to get to know the person I was talking to and just give them the space to just speak. And it was a lot of listening, which is something that's not always easy to do. So getting to build those relational skills and communication skills are definitely vital and have helped me as I approach my clinical experiences and encounters during my rotation year. So I think those soft skills are very vital. And I think this program is very unique because it gives you this avenue with, hours and different people to kind of practice that on and to honestly get better at it over time, even though it may seem a little intimidating. I think towards the end of the program is something that I very much look forward to. So yeah, I hope you all look into this program and you can definitely reach out to me if you have any questions. But yeah, definitely enjoyed my time.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I think Nasser, you're up next.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name is Nasser. I'm a third year med student. I did this summer program 2 years ago now, and I'm here because I thought it was fantastic. And so I guess just like kind of going through like kind of the thought process that I had going in versus like how it ended up being, I would say there were two things that I were worried about prior to signing up. Like I like ended up being like full send on it, but like two things that I was a little bit worried about. One, I don't personally have a strong faith tradition as a med student, and I was worried doing a program on spirituality and health would leave me feeling alienated or isolated. And so I was like kind of wondering, I was like, how do I fit in if I don't identify really closely with any major faith tradition or faith group? And so that was one of my concerns. My other concerns is that this was going to be a program that was very top heavy, didactic heavy, and like kind of just like telling me what I needed to know. And I'm happy to say like both of those were nothing that I needed to worry about. To talk about the first one a little bit is that I think kind of like Darben's mentioned, like a lot of this program is like really immersing yourselves in different faiths, and you'll be surprised at a little bit of the identity formation that can happen as you're exposed, and the thoughts that it will evoke, and the things that it will make you think of and reflect on. And I can't undersell it enough, but like really one of the greatest parts of this program, as Dr. DeLisser was mentioning, is kind of what it wells up in you and like what it makes you think about your identity and how you relate to the patient and like the emotions that it brings up and the things that you might not have connected from before. And everybody's trajectory in that is a little bit different, but I felt like it was a very personally meaningful journey for me. And I'm hoping that people in the future could also do so as well. The other thing about being didactic heavy, one of the things that I think Rhoda does exceptionally well is that makes this program really, really flexible, and it's very tailored to your interests. And I know that I guess depending on the size of the group, it's a little bit different. But we were able to, during my year, really kind of adapt to things that I was interested in learning about and like papers that I was interested in covering and like scholarship that I found personally interesting. And I feel like there's just so much room because it tends to be a smaller program to kind of make sure that you are able to get what you want out of it. And sometimes you don't really know that up front, but like as the schedule goes on, as you're starting to realize, hey, I really like learning about this, that's something that I feel like really found meaningful and I think is one of the strongest assets of the program. I think favorite thing about the program, I think it's hard not to say the patient interactions. That will probably be my favorite thing as well. But just to talk a little bit about a different element of the program, I really, really liked, as I've mentioned, these immersion type experiences. I personally got so much meaning out of like discussing like really weighty topics about like death, dying, in medicine from different faith-based leaders. And I just feel like it really expanded my perspective as to like how do we approach a dying process and like how do we even approach a living process or like serious illness that you'll now have to live with in the future. There's just so much diversity. And as you can imagine, like these are like faith traditions that have existed for thousands of years. So much thought that has gone into it that I just like had not really drawn connections to before. And it really felt like a privilege to be able to learn about that and talk to people who are like really in the throes of it, who know it back and like through and forth and like can really help you expand and like question and answer type. And so the last thing I'll talk about is a patient care experience that mattered. I think it's hard for me to explain why this is the experience that stuck with me, but I met a 21-year-old on my oncology floor during my time during the summer internship. And I visit him like pretty much every other day. And it's hard for me to say exactly why it felt so meaningful, but I guess I could imagine I saw a lot of myself in him, and I kind of saw this like divergence in path, and like he was diagnosed with cancer at a very young age. And I don't know, like I just feel like we formed a really strong connection that I feel like lasted a few weeks, and it's hard for me to kind of explain how much it meant, but it's like one of the things that I consistently reflect back on while I'm like thinking about patient care during my year, and like kind of like what it means to like connect with a patient and like how do you go about doing that. I missed one of the questions and it says um, uh, what it helps me most with patient care. So sorry, I will answer that very quickly and like kind of relates to the story that I was just talking about. I will say the best thing that you learn and probably the most uncomfortable thing that I learned personally was like being okay with silence. Like I am not like if you meet me, like I'm not a type of person who likes to be in prolonged, protracted silence. Like that just makes me physically uncomfortable. But you will learn in these situations, there's just so much you could say and so much you can talk about. And like you will fight the instinct to like run out of a room. And it has been probably the most important lesson I feel like I've learned so far in terms of like when I see patients now and like if it's awkward and if there's a silence, like there is so much, I feel like therapy and utility in just sitting there. And that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for that. So many good points there. All right, Justine is next.
Hi, I'm Justine. I'm a fourth year. I did the spirituality and health internship 3 years ago now. And just for context, my class was like the COVID class. So our first year of med school was really like deprived of a lot of in-person patient interaction. And my background before med school was in nursing. So I was really, that's something that I really valued about being in medicine, is that you get to like develop these relationships with people from all different walks of life. So when my first summer of med school came around, I was like thinking about clerkships coming up, and I wanted to be able to be back in the hospital face to face with patients before I was going to be in the role of a med student. And I think even if you're someone who's like volunteering in a lot of community clinics right now and you do have a lot of patient interaction, I think that the spirituality and health internship offers something completely unique. And that is that you're not a med student. You're not someone who has a responsibility or agenda on their care team, and you are just a person that gets to know another person. I think that is very revealing, like to yourself as well. I think in medicine, we like to be people who can fix things, who can do something tangible, help. But, you know, what if your biggest benefit to that patient is listening to them, or your presence? I think that was something that I really learned, is that like your physical presence sitting in the room can mean so much more to someone than you recognize. Um, like there were just some afternoons during the internship where I would spend like 2 hours sitting in a patient's room watching a movie with them. And, you know, like they felt like there was a connection, because so often we don't think about, you know, when I'm in the room, like talking to the patient, interviewing them so I can prepare for rounds and stuff. After I leave, that patient's probably going to be sitting by themselves for a really long time. Um, and I think that this internship, again, was just really revealing of like what a patient's actual experience is and what their emotional experience is as well. Like, what are they processing after a doctor leaves the room? You know, or after they get some news or after some event happens, all of that in between, like that's still their reality. And you get to enter that reality with them, um, in really like raw, vulnerable, like just authentic moments. So I think it teaches you a lot about, you know, the people that you're actually going to be taking care of, and it teaches you a lot about yourself. Um, I think what helps me most with patient care now is, um, yeah, like you get to talk to patients about faith, about their spirituality, and that doesn't have to be religious. Like one of the things I learned from the internship was just being able to probe what patients actually value, like saying some people are religious, some people are spiritual, some people don't really identify with either. Like where do you resonate with? And that can just start a conversation about values and, um, what drives them, motivates them, inspires them in life. And I think just starting the conversation is honestly the hardest part for a lot of people in medicine. Again, it's not something that we're necessarily taught to do. And so, you know, if you have a patient that makes a comment like, you know, I'm gonna trust this in the hands of God, you'll see a lot of doctors just be like, okay, anyways, because they're uncomfortable with it, and they don't know how to engage with the patient where they're at. Um, so I think the biggest takeaway was just learning to not be afraid to, you know, probe, because patients feel seen and they feel acknowledged when you ask about things that are important to them. And that's part of being a doctor. It's part of caring for people. My favorite thing about the internship was not just the patient interactions, but also the relationships that I built with three other lovely people on this call, Victor, Lauren, and Danielle. Um, I think we went through like a truly like life-changing experience. So yeah, that's honestly like a really lasting thing I'm grateful for from the internship. And then a patient care experience. So I had a patient where, you know, I just walked into the room, was going to do my usual, like, I'm Justine, part of the spirituality and health program. Like, can I just talk to you about how it's going in the hospital? And I realized that this patient did not speak English. yet she like just started talking to me in her own language, knowing that I couldn't understand her. But because I was like one of the first people who actually came in and like asked her how she was doing, she really had a lot to pour out. She was a religious person. She ended up like pulling out a Bible she had in her bed and like uh reading the Bible out loud with me. And again, totally different languages, but it was like the physical presence that connected us. And I think that there's a lot you can communicate that is nonverbal to show that you care. And patients pick up on that. So I think that was like a really poignant experience.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, all of these reflections could just spur on so much more conversation. But in the interest of time, we will move on. My list actually just disappeared from me. So whoever's next, feel free to go ahead.
I think it was me.
Yes, thank you. Okay, great.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I'm also a fourth year medical student, and I was in the same cohort as Justine, Danielle, and Victor. Something that really surprised me about the internship was how much I was kind of pushed. But I'm so incredibly grateful for that because my communication skills just grew immensely. And I really want to share something that one of my attendings on my internal medicine rotation wrote on my evaluation. And I hope this doesn't come across in any way as like bragging. It's truly like meant to show like how much this internship made me a much better communicator. So he wrote, Lauren consistently displayed a very strong bedside manner, not just with cheery patients, but also notably at the bedside of a patient with a more labile mood, which required sensitivity. This was at an aspirational level. She knew when to allow silence and to listen. Many of my residents are still learning this skill. I may be as well. When he wrote that, well, he actually discussed with me his feedback and he kind of like said this sort of thing to me in person. And he actually like asked me, like, I don't know if you've had undergone any like specific communication training, but like this was so impressive. And I told him about the internship and I absolutely owe those skills to the internship. And I want to give a huge shout out to Rhoda. I think that she makes this internship just a very formative experience. And I feel like she's such an honest and kind person who, for me, I felt like she pushed me in a way that I think many people would be like not able to do, but yet like provided so much support while doing that. And it allowed me to grow so much. And so I'm just like really grateful for this internship. And I echo everything that everyone else said. And I think I have many memorable experiences, but just being with people during such life-changing moments is so meaningful, and you'll have so many opportunities to do that during this internship. So I cannot recommend this internship enough.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And yeah, always great to just get real, honest feedback in real time. So hopefully, those skills are something that we all remember and are willing to carry forward. So it'll be Victor and then Danielle.
Saving the best for last. Smart. Yes, I'm Victor, fourth year as well, applying internal medicine. And yeah, I think a lot of great things have been said that I entirely agree with. I'll restrain myself to like three different points that I think are important for the internship. The first one, and the reason why I first got interested in it, was the idea of just talking to patients for like half a day for like an entire summer. One, thrilled me, and two, felt like a good chance to really grow in communication, because when you're going into the patient's room without like a given agenda, like medical or otherwise, and just asked to just talk, you're forced to improvise a lot and forced to kind of think about what is worth discussing, like what do people care about, how can I find that out, and you ask a lot of questions about communication that you wouldn't otherwise think about. I think that doing that repeatedly over the course of the summer gave me a lot of skills that I truly could not find anywhere else in medical school. Like I thought about doing like bridging the gaps, I like community engagement. I thought about doing research like every other med student does. But this is the only program that I think is not duplicated anywhere else in med school. If you'll do scholarly pursuit, you'll do research. Like I've done a bunch of community engagement like over the past few years, and like there's plenty of opportunity for that. But like Justine was saying, this is a skill a lot of providers don't know how to do that well because they're not trained in it, and patients really want to talk about it. Like every patient I talk to has been really grateful when I talk to them about it, but a lot of providers just aren't prepared. And it's kind of a shame. And I think this is a great program to learn a very unique skill set. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it's already been said, it's a great group, and it's a great group of people to talk to. Like Danielle, Justine, Lauren were awesome. Rhoda was great to talk to. Just like having them around was wonderful because, you know, I went into this communication lab, so to speak. I was talking to patients and finding out new ways to communicate. And there were some insights I could get from introspection, but it's also good to just talk to other people too and hear what they have to say. Like one of my top moments from the internship was when I was kind of debriefing a patient interaction with all the three of them and Rhoda. And like I was like, oh my gosh, that patient, I would have had patient talk for like 15 seconds, and it was just like felt like forever. Then Danielle like got out her phone and like set a timer for 15 seconds and was like, was it really that long, Victor? And she was right, it wasn't that long. It's like getting gently roasted by a dear friend who was encouraging me to grow in communication was helpful because I did get better with silence. I did get better with communicating with people in a way that let them talk about deeper things. We talked about a lot of really meaningful stuff together that I still think about to this day, and that still guides not only my patient interactions, but also my interactions with like other colleagues, family, friends, all kinds of people. So it's really hard to replicate. And like, yeah, and Rhoda is just a great organizer of things, great at making space to discuss these things in a meaningful way. I think just the environment of this internship is, again, very unique. So yeah, there's like the communication lab thing, there's a discussion amongst the group thing. And the last thing is just that going back to this program being very unique, I've noticed more and more in my patient interactions that there are just, there's like a second layer to talking to patients that you can technically ignore and still like get the job done as a doctor. But if you want to be like an excellent doctor who really like advances patient care, you have to get to that layer. And that layer, to define it, I think there's like a first layer where it's like patient presented with this thing, these are their lives, like whatever. Like a lot of just like really like numerical kind of perfunctory things that you just have to cover. But there's like a second layer where we actually ask yourself, like, okay, like why is the patient presenting this way? Like who are they? Where are they from? Like what's gonna happen when they get to the hospital? Like who are they in like a deeper way? And you can ignore that entirely. And like you can get through entire hospitalization without ever talking about it. But I think if you do that, you miss out one on a way to help the patient in a long-term manner that like keeps them out of the hospital, that like helps them live in a more meaningful way beyond that. And two, I think you kind of cheat yourself of understanding the most meaningful parts of medicine. Like, I mean, everybody gets burnt out. I get burnt out too. And the thing that always revitalizes me is like encountering patients and realizing that like they have a whole life and community behind them. And then hearing about the stories, hearing about like why it matters for me to be in the hospital supporting them to get them back out there to the people they love and the places that they love. Remembering that I think is very key. And I think my ability to have those discussions with patients is entirely fueled by the internship. Because I remember I'm like my surgery clerkship talking to a patient after rounds about like the meaning of life basically and how she was like suicidal at some point but found that talking to me about like the meaning of things and like how you can find meaning in suffering like rejuvenated her, made her feel like all the stuff she'd gone through was more worthwhile. I remember like being on my sub-I talking to patients with advanced heart failure or COPD and just like talking to them about like, yeah, what comes next, how can life still be meaningful, what do they care about, and how can we get them there. Sitting in palliative care, sitting in the cardiac ICU, just that again and again and again. Even last week on my general medicine elective, like you find that, yeah, you don't have to go that deep, but you can, and it'll benefit your patients a lot. And it's much easier when you spend dedicated time, like in the internship, to do that. Because the fact is, you'll be very busy. I find myself being very busy. There's a lot to learn, a lot to do in medicine, and unless you like really like hone in on it, you're probably not going to like develop those skills like on the fly in clerkships or in residency or whatever. Like it's really beneficial for you to take a dedicated time to do that. And I think the internship is a special place and environment to do that, that you again will probably not see again throughout your career. It's just you'll see it going and going and going from here on forth. So definitely make the most of the summer. Be thoughtful about how you want to spend your time and what things can you never do again. I think the internship is one of those things. It's just a really special time, a really special experience that will ultimately benefit you for the rest of your career and the rest of your life, honestly.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for that. Then it'll be Danielle will be the last one, and then Rhoda will wrap things up for us, and then that'll be it.
All right. You guys can hear me okay? Yes, awesome. I love the nods. Okay. I'm Danielle. I'm a fourth year. As you already know, I did the internship with Justine, Victor, Lauren, and obviously Rhoda as well. I am going to talk about some of the things that I was worried about as well. Bluntly, I was worried about matching. Like, if I don't do research, how am I going to match? I had no idea what specialty I wanted to go into, but like that was concern number one. And I remember talking to Dr. DeLisser. He was like, actually, this can help you. Like someone else who went through it said that they talked about it during all of their interviews. Sure enough, on the other side of interviews, I indeed talked about the internship on like every single one of my interviews. Everyone thought it was such a transformative experience. They were so curious about it. I feel like I taught my interviewers some things. I shared the insight that, we were the only people that our patients could say no to. Like we didn't have to go in there and draw their blood or have to go in there and like do a physical exam on them. Like they could kick us out. And I told that to one of the attendings and they were like, oh, I guess they can't say no to a lot of people. It's like, yes, like that's an important insight to have if you are taking care of patients all day. But anyway, I talked about it on all of my interviews, and now I can say that I have matched, and so it surely did not hurt my chances of matching. In fact, I think it helped. So that was number one. I echo everything that everyone else said about wanting the kind of knowledge base and understanding of different spiritual and religious practices. And as someone who did not identify as a particularly religious person, but I like knowing that a lot of patients make decisions based on their beliefs, it felt like being able to talk about that was important. And I was very uncomfortable with that idea. And so I said, okay, this is actually something that I really need, and I want to grow this skill set. So I echo all of that, and I'm not going to talk a ton more about that because you've already heard it. What I didn't expect from the internship was the skills that I gained in self-care. Rhoda does a fantastic job of like checking in with you on how you're doing. She has days for play of just like, let's remember what it's like to be joyous and playful. And if you feel like you don't have time to practice gratitude, what about practicing some gratitude on your walk home today? Just all of these little moments of like, how can you actually instill these practices into your day-to-day life so that your career can be sustainable and meaningful at the same time, were really, really helpful. And those are things that I still do. The other thing I wanted to add is just that I think we've heard a lot over this call of just how some of these conversations can get very heavy, and you can talk about death and dying a lot. You can also talk about really joyous things. Like I had a patient encounter with someone who was getting discharged that day. He was an older gentleman, and we just talked for hours about his life and all of the amazing things he had done and all the places where he worked and like how he met his wife. And it was just a really lovely conversation. And at the end, he told me, well, like that was such a fun trip down memory lane. I'm so glad you came in today. And so that's something that kind of stuck with me, because being able to ask people about their values and what gives them meaning oftentimes can bring them to places of happiness and joy as well. The last thing I'll say, and this is echoing something, but I'm going to echo it anyway, is just the people are fantastic. Like we had lunch together pretty much every day. Like everyone came over to my house for dinner one day. It's just a really special group of people that kind of self-selects into people who are interested in the same things that you are interested in. And are approaching it likely from different perspectives than you thought of before. And so being able to do this experience with such wonderful people and really get a skill set that I didn't think I had. This is an aside. Part of the experience asks you to like completely recall a conversation that you had with a patient. And before the summer, I was like, I can never do that. And after the summer, I was like, oh, I can do that. And I think I actually did it pretty well. So like, just being able to have that growth with such wonderful people is a really, really special time. And I hope you all do the internship. Sorry for rambling.
No rambling happened during any of this time. And the fact that we went longer than we planned is, I think, really a demonstration of enthusiasm and richness. So thank you all for your staying on during this time.
Rhoda?
I think, yeah.
Horace here. Just one last thing. I mean, there's a stipend, right? They get
Oh, yeah,
$3,500.
right.
They get $3,500
Thanks for
for
that.
6
Yeah, you're
weeks,
right.
and they still have
Oh, and I think freezing has happened. Oh, did I freeze? Oh, did I
okay,
freeze?
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, but you're back now.
I'm back.
This is like just the money piece is the icing. So I don't want to obscure all the things the students have said. I still want those who are listening to still remember a little bit of stipend on
Mhm,
top of all of the good things that they experience. Anyway,
mhm.
back to you. You
No,
can finish up.
thank you. No, because so much has been covered that I would want to bring up. I like things like, yeah, so much has been covered, and it's wonderful to hear. I do think that if somebody is, so yes, it helps you match for your residency. And if you really feel this is a bit of a shift, if you really, really feel like you need to get some research in as part of it, we might not full on do that during the internship, but you can work on it. We can find a way to work on it a bit during the internship, and then certainly in the fall of, after the summer. So like if you really need that to reassure yourself, that's fine, but I don't think you need it. And yes, we spend a lot of time talking and listening for long periods of time. And one of the things that also comes out of it is compassion for knowing when you're tired and figuring out how to keep going. And another thing that comes up is figuring out your own way to, in a very simple, short way, express care for a patient. Like, I wish I could stay longer, but I have to, keep going. Thanks for letting me visit you today. Doesn't ask for anything. Or to say, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions and give you a lot of information, but in the last maybe minute or 30 seconds we have, I hope you'll tell me something that matters to you. So you prep them. So you'll get to figure out your own strategy for having an economy of time with patients or family members if you know how to spend time with them, so you can really hone your craft related to communication, or you tell me how I can help you, and it might be holding somebody's hand for 30 seconds in silence or making eye contact and sustaining it for a moment. None of these are prescribed, but that is something that you'll get to develop in the process of this internship. And I know that everybody on this call is very eager to hear your questions, give more feedback. So please consider this, and thank you so much, everybody, for your gifts. And a lot of times we would take a breath. So I feel like, can we take a breath?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all so much. Congrats to the fourth years who logged in on the day finding out that they get to be, real doctors someday. So amen. That's amazing. So awesome. Well, yeah, thank you all so much. And this is recorded, so we can go back and watch it anytime you want. All right, have a good evening.
Thank you.